Okay, I'm going to be teaching you how to balance and how to stall with Doomfist. And I'm not talking stalling the point, I'm talking like stalling your character on roofs like a David Blaine magic demo. These are two terms which people often mistake for one another, so I'm going to show you the differences between the two. These both involve surfaces in the game which you can't walk on, like roofs. You'll slide off of the roofs when you try to stand on them. An important thing to note is that you can get parts of these sliding surfaces which are actually flat, which is where balancing comes into this. Though the entirety of this roof has the sliding surface, the top part of it actually has a flat collision model. This means that there's a thin line at the top of this roof's collision model where you're able to balance around by using your movement keys and slide around like a guppy in a bathtub. Notice how when I go to land, I use my movement keys mid-air to position myself above the balance spot, then counteract this movement just before landing. Doing so will remove a large amount of errors that will occur with sliding too far off the balance spot. Now you may be wondering what a stall spot is. Well, let me tell ya. To put it simply, a stall spot is a spot where you're able to wedge yourself whilst on a sliding surface. This can be between two sliding surfaces like shown here between these two roofs, or wedging yourself between a sliding surface and a wall, for example, like here on Rialto. Stall spots are a lot to do with map knowledge and knowing exactly where you're able to wedge yourself. There are the more simplistic spots like this one and the one on Ilios, and then we get to some more complex ones. And right now you might be thinking, what the F, David Blaine? This becomes a lot simpler when you understand the term collision model. Almost every structure in the game has a different collision model to the graphic model. It's basically like a hitbox but for buildings and trees and stuff. The collision model is the true shape of every entity and determines how you have a collision with that object. And although it's deceiving and different from the graphic model, the collision model of this roof actually looks something like this. Would you fucking believe it? This explains how you're able to stay up there. The little dip in the collision model allows for a stall spot between the sliding surface on the right and the tiny lip of the sliding surface on the left. Here's a slightly different example on Hollywood, but again applying the same principles. It's deceiving at first, but there's an invisible wall right in front of me. And though the graphic model doesn't show it, the collision model is actually at a minor slant. The red line being the invisible wall, the blue being the graphic model, and the green being the collision model. Not using any movement keys means I'll eventually slide off, as it's slanted. So I have to keep counteracting this slant with the opposite movement key. And finally, one last thing I wanted to cover is the 4-second bounce. This can happen in both stall and balance spots and is where you're stationary on a sliding surface. It's pretty self-explanatory. If you stay still for 4 seconds, you'll bounce. This is supposed to be in the game as a mechanic for preventing getting stuck in places where you're not supposed to. But you can use it in stall and balance spots for a rollout perhaps. And that's just about all there is to it.